Every day, a box started arriving at my door, and at first the contents were meaningless, but after the third day, I realized that in those photos, there were moments I didn't remember, and most terrifyingly, in one of those photos I was seen, taking that box inside from the doorstep. My name is Adrian. I am 28 years old, and the only reason I'm telling you this is because I think this isn't just happening to me anymore, because if this is something, it's not just watching me, it's recording me, and maybe one day, a box will be left at your door too. My life was quite ordinary. I lived alone in a small apartment, worked freelance, and days would pass without me leaving the house, so my connection to the outside world was already limited, meaning if someone were watching me, it would be hard to notice. But still, I should have realized it wasn't something ordinary when the first box arrived. But I didn't, because people love to believe in logical explanations, and I did the same. The first box arrived in the morning hours. When I opened the door, no one was there, but a small, brown cardboard box was sitting on the doorstep. There was no sender information on it, just my name, and even this detail was strange enough, but I interpreted it as a prank from a friend because no other explanation came to mind. I took the box inside, put it on the table, and just stared for a few seconds because there was a slight unease inside me, but it wasn't a strong feeling. It was more like a something is weird but it's not important feeling. I opened the box. Inside was just one thing, a photo. When I took the photo in my hand, I couldn't understand what I was looking at for a few seconds because the image was familiar but foreign at the same time. After a few seconds, I realized this was my room, exactly the room I was in now, but the angle was strange. The photo was taken as if from the corner of the room, from an angle I usually didn't stand in, and for a photo to be taken from that angle, someone had to be here. But that wasn't the main problem in the photo. There was me. I was sitting at the computer and my back was turned. At that moment, the unease inside me grew because I didn't remember when this photo was taken. Maybe it was just an old photo, I thought, but the details were different. The glass on the table, the curtain on the window, the small piece of paper on the floor. They were all the same as they were now. This photo was taken recently, but I didn't remember this. I looked at the photo for a while, then I laughed because my brain didn't want to take it seriously. There must be a camera, I said. They've placed a hidden camera. But even that wasn't logical because why would anyone do such a thing? I left the photo on the table. The box was empty and that day ended, but that was just the beginning. The next day, the door knocked at the same time. I opened it faster this time because a sense of curiosity had formed within me. When I opened the door, there was no one again, and again, there was a box on the floor. This time, the feeling inside me had changed because now I knew this wasn't a coincidence. I took the box inside, locked the door, and this time I checked the surroundings before opening it. The windows were closed, the door was secure. There was no one in the house but me. I opened the box, another photo, but this time, it was closer in the photo. It was me again, but this time not at the computer. I was standing up and looking at the camera, but I didn't remember this. This was impossible because if you're looking at a camera, you remember it, but I didn't remember. And at this point, the logical explanations in my mind began to crumble because this didn't feel like a joke anymore. This was something planned. I turned the photo over. On the back, only one thing was written. You see that word? It felt like it wasn't meant for me, as if someone was being reported to. The moment I saw the words "you see," the slight feeling of unease inside me changed completely because this was no longer just about someone watching me. This meant someone knew that I saw it too. And that thought opens a very dangerous door in a person's mind because being watched is one thing, but being aware of it while being watched is something entirely different. I put the photo on the table, but my eyes wouldn't leave it because my brain was still trying to understand. There's a camera, I said again, maybe the neighbors. But I couldn't even finish that sentence because that explanation was collapsing on itself. Who could photograph the inside of my house in such detail, and why would they send it to me? I tried to work all day but couldn't focus. I was constantly checking behind me, looking at the window, listening to the door. Every small sound seemed louder, and this situation began to exhaust me because my mind could no longer stay calm. At one point, I decided to get up and check the house thoroughly because if there was a camera, I had to find it. I looked for hours in every corner, at every object, but I found nothing. This result, instead of comforting me, made me even more uneasy because if there was no camera, then how were these photos being taken? Night fell. I turned off the lights. I lay in bed, but sleep was impossible because the same question kept spinning in my head. Who is taking these photos? I closed my eyes but opened them again a few seconds later because at that moment, a very strong sensation arose within me. The feeling that someone was watching me. This feeling had happened before, but this time it was different. It was clearer, as if someone was really there but I couldn't see them. So I slowly turned my head and looked at the corner of the room. There was nothing, but I continued to feel it. I fell asleep with this feeling, or at least I thought I slept, because whether what I saw that night was a dream or something else, I'm still not sure. In my dream, I was in my own room, but it was different. It was darker, quieter, and I wasn't alone. Someone was standing by the door. I could make out the silhouette, but I couldn't see the face. It didn't move, it was just looking at me. And at that moment, I realized that I was looking at it too, but the me in the dream couldn't move. I was just watching. This situation created a massive fear inside me because control was completely gone then. That silhouette slowly raised its hand and took a photo. A flash went off and I woke up. I was panting. The room was dark, but this time it was real. I got up immediately, turned on the light, and the first thing I did was look at the table because I had a feeling, a strong feeling. On the table, there was a new photo. I froze because I hadn't put that photo there. I approached slowly. My hand was shaking. I took the photo and what I saw stopped me completely. In the photo, I was lying in bed. My eyes were closed. I was sleeping, but the angle of the photo was from beside the door, just like in the dream, and in the very corner of the photo, very faintly, there was a shadow resembling a human silhouette. At this point, I could no longer deny it because this wasn't a joke. It wasn't a camera. This was something, and that thing wasn't just watching me, it was also in the same space as me. While I was sleeping, while I was unaware, it was here. I backed away. My heart was beating very fast. Because at that moment I realized I wasn't living alone. I barely made it through the morning because after that night, sleeping was impossible. I left the lights on, locked the door, even put a chair in front of the door, but I knew none of these really meant anything because if that thing was really here, doors wouldn't stop it. The same time in the morning, the door, asterisk tick, asterisk I froze. I didn't want to go, but I felt I had to because now this was less about fear and more a search for answers. I slowly approached the door, held my breath, and opened it. Again, no one was there, but the box was there. This time, what I felt while looking at the box wasn't fear, it was acceptance. I took the box inside, closed the door, put it on the table, and for a few seconds, I just looked, then I opened it. Inside was another photo, but this time, it was different. In the photo, I was opening the door just like I was doing right now, but in the photo, there was a detail. Behind the door, something was standing, and that thing wasn't me. The moment I saw the thing behind the door, time seemed to stop for a few seconds because my brain didn't want to accept what it saw. I looked at the photo again, then slowly raised my head and looked at the actual door. My biggest fear was that the thing was still there, but the space behind the door was empty, completely empty, and this void did not comfort me. On the contrary, it scared me more because it meant that thing was only visible in the photo. I swallowed. I took the photo in my hand again. I looked at the details. That silhouette looked human, but its proportions weren't right. Its shoulders were a bit too narrow, its arms were longer than they should be, and the most disturbing part was its posture, like someone trying to learn how to stand upright. This image created an indescribable feeling inside me because it wasn't a human, but at the same time, it wasn't entirely foreign either. This was something that had been imitated. I turned the photo over. This time there was writing, but it wasn't short like before. Closer the moment I read that word, something inside me collapsed because this wasn't just an observation, this was progress. That thing was getting closer to me, or I was getting closer to it, and not knowing which was true made the situation even worse. I decided not to leave the house that day because the outside world didn't matter to me anymore. My problem was here in this room behind this door, or maybe right next to me. Even moving with this thought was hard, but still, I had to do something because staying passive felt more dangerous. I took my phone. I started a video recording inside the house. I didn't have a tripod. I put the phone on top of some books, set the camera to see the general view of the room, and started the recording because if that thing was really here, I could catch it, or at least I could prove its existence. Hours passed, nothing happened. The camera was recording, I was sitting at the computer, but I wasn't working anymore. I was just waiting because my mind was completely focused on this event. Every now and then I'd get up and look around the room, check the windows, but everything was the same, normal, even too normal. This too normal feeling bothered me more, because for nothing to happen in the middle of something this big wasn't natural. Evening came. I stopped the recording. I opened the video. I started watching. For the first few hours, there was nothing. There was only me sitting, standing up, walking around, ordinary movements, ordinary images. And for a moment I thought maybe. But then the video glitched. There was a momentary glitch, the image distorted, and then it came back, but something had changed. The me in the video was no longer moving. He was frozen, staring at the screen. But I hadn't done anything like that at that moment. My heart quickened. I rewound the video. I watched it again. Same place, glitch, and a frozen me, but this time there was something else behind me, a shadow. The moment I saw that shadow, the fear inside me turned into something physical, because this was no longer just a feeling, this was proof. I paused the video, leaned toward the screen, looked at the details, and that was when I realized that shadow wasn't static. It was moving, very slightly. This movement was so small that normally it wouldn't be noticed, but I was focused on every detail now. This is real, I said to myself, but even saying that sentence was hard because it being real was worse. I continued the video. The shadow slowly grew, approached, and then it stood right behind me. The me in the video was still frozen, but my head very slowly turned back. This movement wasn't like a human. It was too slow, too controlled, and most terrifyingly, I didn't remember this. The video continued. I slowly stood up, walked toward the camera, but my walk wasn't my walk. It was smoother, more flawless, as if someone was imitating me. I approached the screen. The me in the image stopped in front of the camera and smiled, but that smile did not belong to me. When I saw that moment in the video, I reflexively turned around because my brain was still thinking of the possibility, maybe right now behind me. But the room was empty, completely empty, and this void did not comfort me because I knew now that this thing didn't have to be seen. It didn't need to be visible to exist. I looked at the video again. The me on the screen was very close to the camera. His face was in the dark, but his eyes reflected the light. That detail sat heavy in my stomach because that reflection wasn't normal. As if it wasn't an eye, but something else, like a surface, like something hollow. Then the me on the screen spoke, but there was no sound, only lip movement. I played it back slowly. I read the lips. It's getting closer. The moment I understood that word, the phone fell from my hand because this was no longer just watching. This was communication. And this communication wasn't for me. Maybe it belonged to the thing trying to take my place. I slowly backed away, my breathing quickened, and at that moment, the door knocked. The sound of the door was sharper this time, clearer. And that sound silenced all the thoughts inside me at once, because now I knew what I was going to face, or at least I could guess. I didn't move from my spot for a few seconds because opening this door was a threshold. If I opened it, something would change. If I didn't, maybe nothing would change, but even that thought was false because there was no turning back now. I slowly walked to the door. My hand reached for the door handle, trembling. I hesitated. I took a breath and I opened the door this time. There was no box, there was nothing, but at the end of the hallway, someone was standing, looking at me, not moving, and at that moment, the most terrifying realization of my life formed, because he was me. The moment I realized the thing standing at the end of the corridor was me, all logic within me collapsed. Seeing one's own existence from the outside is not just terrifying, it is a contradiction the mind cannot accept, and I was frozen right in the middle of that contradiction. I stared without blinking because I felt that in a single moment of distraction, it would move. And that was the strangest part. The thing wasn't moving, yet I knew it was going to get closer. This feeling wasn't explainable, but it was crystal clear. For a few seconds, nothing happened. The corridor was silent, the lights were steady, the thing was still, but this stillness wasn't real. It was as if a fragment of time stood only between us and the outside world remained unaware of this moment. "This is not possible," I said, but my voice came out so weak I could barely hear it myself. What I said had no meaning. Whether it was possible or not didn't matter anymore because it was happening and I was living it. That thing tilted its head slightly. This movement was so small it would normally go unnoticed, but for me it was a sign, a beginning. At that moment I realized this encounter was the start of something that would never end. I wanted to pull back, but my feet wouldn't move, as if my body no longer belonged to me, or at least wasn't entirely under my control. This feeling amplified the fear inside me because losing control is one of humanity's most fundamental terrors then. That thing took a step, but it wasn't a physical step. The distance didn't change, it just felt closer. This wasn't a physical movement, it was a shift in perception which made the situation even more dangerous. If distance meant nothing, then escape meant nothing either. "What do you want?" I asked because it was the only important question left, though I wasn't sure if I truly wanted to hear the answer. The thing remained silent for a few seconds. Then its lips moved, and this time there was a voice. Very low, very faint, but it was mine, your place, it said. Those words echoed inside me because this was no longer a possibility. It was an intention, and the target of that intention was me. I stepped back. This time my feet moved, but it wasn't an escape, it was just a reflex. Deep down, I knew that wherever I went, this thing would find me. In this house, in this city, or somewhere else. It wouldn't matter. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and leaned my back against it. My breathing was rapid. My heart was beating as if it would tear through my chest. This was no longer a suspicion, it was a fact. I was not alone, and this lack of solitude was not comforting, it was lethal. For a few seconds, I just stood there, listening for any sound from outside, but there was nothing. Total silence. And that silence was screaming. I slowly moved away from the door to the center of the room and looked around. Everything now seemed like a potential threat. The photos on the table, the shadows on the wall, even my own hands were beginning to feel foreign. This feeling was dangerous because when a person becomes estranged from their own body, they begin to lose themselves. That's when I noticed something, the table. There was a new box on it. I froze because I hadn't opened the door and no one had come inside, but that box was there. I approached slowly. My fear was starting to turn into a habit, a bad thing, because getting used to fear makes a person careless. But I had to open it. These boxes were now the only source of answers. I opened the box. Inside was a photo, but this time it was very different. I wasn't in the photo, or I was, but not inside. The photo was taken from the outside, from across the building. My apartment window was visible, and standing in front of that window was someone. The silhouette wasn't clear, but the posture was familiar because it was me. But I was inside the room at that moment. This contradiction strained my brain because I couldn't be in two places at once, yet the photo said otherwise. I turned the photo over. This time, the writing was longer. "Are outside now." The moment I read that sentence, something snapped inside me. This wasn't just a statement, it was a declaration of a transformation. But what transformation? Who was outside? Me? Or at that moment I looked in the mirror and my greatest fear became reality, because the me in the mirror reacted to me a second late. The moment I saw the reflection react a second late, the last piece of my reality shattered. This was no longer an external threat. It was a corruption touching my very existence. I slowly raised my hand and consciously watched my movement. My hand rose, but the hand in the mirror paused for a moment, then followed me. The delay was very short, but it was felt. A sensation that hollows a person out because there is no longer trust even between your body and your image. I held my breath, leaned toward the mirror, and stared without blinking. I didn't want to miss this moment. The reflection's face was in shadow, but the eyes were focused on me. This focus was not something a reflection does, it was conscious. This realization spread through me like a cold wave because I understood then that this wasn't just a delay, this was a separate entity. "You are not me," I said, but the moment the words left my mouth, they felt meaningless. The thing in front of me already wasn't me. It was something that wanted to take my place. Accepting this truth tears a person apart because this isn't just an enemy, it is a you that wants to replace you. The me in the mirror smiled, but I hadn't smiled. That moment ended everything. It was no longer a suspicion, it was a certainty. That thing was independent, it had its own movements, its own intent, and most importantly, it was connected to me. I backed away, moving away from the mirror because looking at that image any longer was unbearable. But no matter how far I went, the feeling wouldn't leave. I was being watched, followed, and perhaps I had already begun to be replaced. Then my phone vibrated. I looked at the screen, unknown number. I didn't want to answer, but something inside me told me I had to. It wasn't curiosity anymore, it was necessity. My finger slowly touched the screen and I brought the phone to my ear. Silence, but this silence wasn't empty. There was the sound of breathing, and that breath was my breath. "Now you understand," the voice said. The sentence was so calm it wasn't just scary. It was killing. It wasn't a threat, it was an explanation. An explanation saying a process had been completed. "What do you want?" I asked, but the question was meaningless now because I already knew the answer. "For you to live," it said. That sentence echoed inside me. This wasn't just an entity, it was a displacement process, and I was trapped within it. "I'm here," I said reflexively, but the moment I said it, I felt it was wrong. Being here no longer meant anything. Where was I? Was I in my body, in the photos, in the mirror? Or had I already stepped outside? The phone cut off at that moment. The door knocked, but this time the sound was different, closer, heavier, and most terrifyingly, the door was already open. I slowly turned my head. The door was ajar, and through that gap, someone was coming in. I didn't see the steps, but I felt the presence. The air changed, the room narrowed, breathing became difficult. I realized then that this was no longer the thing inside the photos. This had passed directly into my world. I backed away, but my foot caught on something and I fell to the floor. My eyes were locked on the door because there was no escape now. That thing had entered, and this entry was the beginning of the end. Then I saw it. It was walking toward me. Every step was my step. Every movement was mine, and most terrifyingly, the face was my face, but the eyes were empty. As that thing approached me, the fear within me reached its peak. This wasn't just an encounter, it was a moment of exchange. I tried to crawl backward, but my body had grown heavy, as if I had been prepared for this moment. I wasn't supposed to escape, and I couldn't. "This isn't real," I said, but my voice no longer felt like it belonged to me because the connection between my mind and body was starting to sever. The thing stopped right in front of me. It looked at me and it smiled, the same smile from the video, from the mirror, from everywhere. This repetition was a loop, and I was inside that loop. Then it raised its hand and it touched my face. In that instant, everything changed. Suddenly, I was somewhere else, the same room, but different, colder, emptier. I got up, looked around. Everything was familiar but felt wrong at the same time. This wasn't my room, this was its place. I ran to the door, opened it, stepped into the corridor, but there was no corridor, only darkness. I turned back, looked in the mirror, and this time the reflection was normal, no delay, no difference, because now I was the reflection. If you are reading this, it isn't a story, it's a record. I know where I am now, but I can't go back. And the most terrifying thing is, sometimes I still see him. The thing living my life in my room, in my body, speaking with my voice, and no one notices because he is perfect, more perfect than me. And that's why no one understands that he isn't me. And yesterday, I saw another box in front of my door, but this time, it didn't have my name on it. It had another name, maybe. You're next.